Hello, happy Wednesday, happy summer Wednesday. Tony and I were just talking before this that it's slowly happening, but as you may have guessed, I am beyond excited. This is Tony Talbot, and just so that you guys all know, I've been following this guy for a little bit. Not in a creepy way or anything like that, but I've been riveted to a lot of his teachings with respect to the hidden job market. Tony is coming to us from the UK. Thank you so much. He is an avid football player, and he's also been a guest speaker at my portfolio Rocket Group. But why I absolutely have been so excited about learning from Tony is because he has literally dedicated his career to tapping into the hidden job markets. He has a podcast called Career Move Secrets, and it is the insider's guide to getting hired in the hidden job market. And many people have lots of thoughts about the hidden job market. And rather than make it come from me, I wanted to defer to Tony. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you for being so passionate about this topic. And that leads us right into the first question, Tony. Why are you focused and so incredibly dedicated to this topic of the hidden job market?
Well, thank you for having me on. Appreciate that. And why am I interested in it? I've been a headhunter for just over 20 years. So my job is really involved in the hidden job market pretty much all of the time. Search has changed a lot in those 20 years. At the outset, when I first started in recruitment, we talked about search and selection. And search is headhunting, selection is advertising, taking people from advertised jobs. So yes, in my first maybe 3-4 years, I did a lot of advertising and selected people in the common way that people understand that, in that you apply to a job that you see either in the press or online, and you apply to that job, and you go through an application process. And I would typically do my recruitment that way and get 250 CVs in, physically in through the mail, and go through that process of interviewing people. But actually in the last 15 years, certainly in the last 10, I haven't advertised any jobs whatsoever, because really what I do, and what actually most of my contemporaries in recruitment and particularly in search do, is that we actually go to source. We are headhunting people directly for roles. We're actually headhunting people that are entirely passive, that are not looking for a job right now, because that's how the market really operates now, which I know could be very frustrating for people who are actually in the open market looking for jobs. But it's important to understand that that's how it works, and to understand, I guess, your odds and your chances of success if you're not aware of how recruitment works these days. So yes, I'm devoted to it because that's the market in which I operate. It's how recruitment works, and I like to try and inform people that when you apply online to a job, there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes. Maybe the job isn't real. Maybe the job has been on for a year. Maybe the job is already nearly filled. Maybe there's a short list of people that are already way ahead of you. Maybe you're in average terms, you're one of 250 people that have applied to any job that's through the internet these days. That's the average. So your average odds are 250 to 1, but actually they're not that good, because, as I say, somebody like me is creating a short list, which you're not on, and those shortlist people have been selected more often than not, or they've been come through some sort of referral networking piece. So yes, I'm interested in it because I make my living out of it.
Yes, John, thanks for coming. He says, wow, that's very frustrating, sad even, right? And so
it doesn't need to be if you understand it and understand how it works. So that's why I guess that's why I try and explain to people how it really works, so that you can get ahead of that and actually infiltrate the hidden job market. Because look, the hidden job market is not a big job board that we can all just access. It doesn't have a load of people that you can just, or a load of jobs that you can just access and pick out the right job for you. It works in a totally hidden way, as we might think. What you really need to do is to be able to go into a relevant industry and understand what's happening there, or even into a relevant company and find out what's happening there. It's about intel, which is why recruiters are a very good source of information about jobs that you've never heard of. It's because they're plugged into a market sector. If they work in, I don't know, marketing or advertising, they know the marketing advertising market, perhaps in a locality to them. They know what's happening in New York City, and they know all the jobs or all the opportunities, which aren't jobs yet, that are not job specs yet, that are opportunities in waiting, or needs or desires or problems that companies have that you can, or a candidate of theirs could solve. So
absolutely. I wanted to just address this because this is a question that comes up a lot. That open to hire, frame, they call it a frame on LinkedIn. I have my opinions about this. I absolutely do not endorse it at all. And there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, what's wrong with that?" I believe that it cheapens your brand.
I think it devalues you. Yeah, I do. I could understand why, I love LinkedIn. I think it's absolutely fabulous. But of course, that's a marketing strategy from them to make, users think, oh, I'm engaging with decision makers. But no, I think it cheapens you a little bit. I think you're better off trying to be more specific and speak to people in your industry and network through LinkedIn. Definitely use LinkedIn, and I think it's the best method of all. But I wouldn't. It's like putting a for sale house, a for sale sign over your house, and people will take advantage of that when it's your career. They may well under offer you and all those sorts of things, which are not necessarily what you want.
I would err on the side of having people be attracted to your value rather than be attracted to the fact that, hey, I'm open, right? Yeah. I definitely think that. I hope that answers your question, Melanie. And please post yours when you have them. I want to steer this conversation into this term hidden job market and not spend a lot of time on it. People get their panties in a bundle, right? They're like, oh, it's not hidden. Let's change the term. Let's call it the unadvertised job market. Like, what is your thoughts around that? Is that just a like?
Yeah, it's a bit of a term. They're the same thing. So the hidden job market is the term used to describe jobs that are not advertised online or anywhere else. It refers to all the ways in which you get recruited. The biggest section of people that are recruited, and this is according to Glassdoor and other sort of, I guess, non-aligned groups, the biggest group of candidates that are successful at interview are referrals. And that's thought to be as much as about, 39.9% of people that get hired are hired through referral. That means somebody in the company that, if it's LinkedIn, somebody getting a job at LinkedIn because they've been referred by somebody else who works at LinkedIn.
Okay, and so that's nearly 40%.
Nearly 40%. It's the know, like, and trust factor. If you are already known to a business through somebody else and they say they vouch for you, that's a great way of getting into a business. So that's one of your number one strategies. Totally. If you're thinking about making a move and you like the look of a particular company and you know somebody there, I would always speak to that person, get the inside track about their hiring process, what they like, what their problems are, what's going on in the business, who could you speak to get the inside track, and then how can you navigate your way to somebody that would be your immediate boss within that business, and how can you approach them directly, connect with them on LinkedIn, like the stuff that they post, build a relationship with them online, and move that progressively towards, hey, what could I do for you? Because if you can get on their radar by liking the things that they are posting, by asking good questions, by being helpful to them as well, then you're so much closer to actually an interview than you are if you just apply to a job that 250 other people have applied for. Because the other thing that I would argue about that job is the recruitment process ends in a job spec. It certainly doesn't begin in a job spec. It begins through a need or a want, a conversation, maybe 2 or 3 things that the hiring manager is really looking for. And most jobs get filled by a hiring manager saying to people that are nearest and dearest to him, his staff, his colleagues, we've got this problem of we want to open a new market, or we've got somebody's just leaving. Who could do that job? Who do you know? Most jobs get filled through that referral process, nearly 40%. So, they don't even reach the market. They don't even reach me. The next phase is if they run out of, they can't get a short list at that stage, they will speak to somebody like me, because I'm calling them all the time, and people like me have relationships with people in companies, and we're saying, what's happening with you guys? Oh, somebody's just left, or we're just opening a new market. We're almost taking a job spec from them. They haven't written one. And what we're understanding is that they need 2 or 3 things. They must have this experience. They must have worked this territory. They must have this language skill, whatever it is. And we go off and speak to candidates that might fit that bill. That is a sort of what people call a contingency search. And we'll go through to some point where we might say, hey, look, this is going to be much harder to fill. What we need to do is a retained search where we're commissioned to do that. Maybe then it might turn into a job spec.
Maybe then.
Maybe.
So I want to put this on pause for 1 minute, because I want to address some things that come up in this process that you've probably heard, and I know I have, which is like, isn't the hidden job market a lot of work? And isn't that like a lot of throwing darts out there and not knowing when that so-called hidden opportunity is going to show up? And why don't I just go and apply now? I know that job is open. And I am often met with a lot of resistance, because on the appearance side, it looks very tempting, right?
Yeah.
It's right. You can't help it.
I would probably do this, in a way. Obviously I'm conditioned to think differently, but your first port of call might be to go online and you think, well, here's this great big market. There's never been more jobs. That there are an enormous amount of jobs out there. And partly the reason why there is so many is there's an enormous amount of duplication. So, most recruiters that at the lower level, they do buy lots of job adverts and they place them. So they buy a quota and they make sure they're targeted to fulfill those job ads. Now, I would argue, having worked in the industry for as long as I have, a lot of them are just marketing stuff. They're basically saying, we're in the market, we look for these sorts of people, hoping that good candidates will come by, but sometimes there isn't even really a job behind that. That is a practice that some companies use. In other situations, they don't have access to the job, so they cut and paste it from another recruiter or from another hiring company in the hope that they will find the candidate that another company won't. So you apply thinking, I'm now getting access to this job, and you're not really. You're talking to a recruiter who's hoping to use your CV as currency to open an opportunity for them. That's another thing that really does happen. And then even with companies, I was reading a piece in the Harvard Business Review, which suggested companies, the roles that they are putting on their own websites, 20 or 30% of them were not real. And the reason, because they're posting stuff to create talent pools for jobs that they think might happen in the future. They're posting jobs to create talent pools for contracts they've not won, or because they're just too, lazy, unorganized to take jobs off that are already filled. There's lots and lots of stuff going on out there. So I would always qualify, and here's, a hot tip, if you like. If I was applying for a job and I could find out who's posted the job, I would speak to that person before I replied, because I'd always want to be having a personal relationship with them anyway. And I would ask them questions like, how long have you been looking? How many people have applied? Have you had any interviews yet? Is there a shortlist in place? is this being advertised internally? All the sorts of things, are you able to make an immediate hire? All the sorts of things that qualify as to whether this opportunity is genuine and live right now. And by doing that, frankly, you'll also uncover things in the hidden job market, because you'll speak to a hiring manager who says, that is filled, but funnily enough, we've got another job very similar,
Exactly.
or whatever it might be. So
I want
speaking to people.
I want to address this too. Wendy, great question. Does that mean we should never apply for a job that is posted online, even at a company website?
No, I would not say never. I would say, particularly on a company website, as I've just said, I would find out, even if it's the internal recruiter, have a conversation with that person about it. I personally wouldn't throw my CV into an applicant tracking system, because I don't trust that applicant tracking system to represent me correctly. Even if I'd tailored my CV for that particular role, I don't know what the parameters of that applicant tracking system is. Around about 60-70% of companies have one. What it is designed to do is to filter out CVs. I have one client who, in fact, on my podcast, I had a CEO tell me that when they put a particular job up, they got 5,000 applications. Nobody can read 5,000 applications, so they have to have a method of getting rid of 99% of them, essentially. Right. So if your CV does not say this, you don't get it. You don't get through the filter. If you haven't use this keyword, it doesn't. All the sort of things that none of us can be bothered to really work out what those things are. So I would again look to speak directly. If I couldn't do that, I'd want to find out, do I know somebody there that I can speak to? I would want the inside track, and then I would work out what is actually important, because a job spec rarely tells you. I work with job specs. As I say, there's 3-4 things in those job specs that are genuinely what they need. The rest is bluff and bluster and HR stuff. And the problem with anybody reading any piece of literature whatsoever, is people read into it what they want to hear. So most people.
So here's what John's asking too. From what you're saying, it sounds like the whole hiring process really only exists to justify HR's position at the company.
I'm not sure that's what I'm saying. I am saying HR can create more problems than they solve. I think there's a tail wagging the dog situation. Hiring managers is what you need to concentrate on. They're the people that make the decisions. Big companies have HR processes, and sometimes you have to go through that front door to get to the hiring managers, but it's the hiring managers that make decisions. Companies will often put a process around it, because that's what companies do. And the bigger the company, the more the process.
Yes.
But if you can get to source, this is what we do in recruitment. It's what all salespeople do. Get to a decision maker.
Exactly. And so, Wendy, yes, those systems are so broken. There has to be a better way for companies to identify the best candidate. And
it's volume, isn't it? Ultimately, you can see their problem, that if you're, I don't know, let's say you're Apple, I'm guessing Google, if you advertise a job, umpteen million people want that job. And how do you determine who's going to get it? And we've all heard about the stupid things that they do. Even when people get to interview, how many ping pong balls does it take to fill a jumbo jet? These things are all designed to, because they are trying to filter a group of people down to those that they think are the most appropriate. I bet you that Google and Apple have an algorithm and a system that is more aggressive than anybody else's about how you get in. And I would also bet you a substantial amount of money that they use their referral scheme more than anyone else.
Absolutely.
So there's nobody getting into Apple who hasn't known somebody in Apple. It's the back door. It's the back door you need to go through.
The referrals are very valuable for a number of reasons. And there's all kinds of backup and research that say that the reason why referrals are so powerful is because if you're a rock star at this organization, chances are other rock stars. You're liaising with those people all the time. So my referral, as somebody who's at Google or Apple or wherever it is, that says, oh my God, you got to talk to Tony, is really a really strong influencer in that hiring decision.
You're at the top of the queue. It's accelerated know, like, and trust. It's know, like, and trust by referral. It's Bob Berg that we talk about, and
Yes.
what does Bob say? On average, people do business with and refer people to
100%.
opportunities that they know, like, and trust. And it is right. People will, as I say, they will trust the view of somebody else that they also trust. So that's their best filter. If beyond that, when you're looking at the open market, it's about relevance. And this is the other thing I want to say to people who are looking for jobs. We had a similar conversation in your portfolio rocket group, Lauren. If you're making a move and you decide to move out of industry and into a job, and you target a job you've never done before, good luck, because you're doing that through a process of applying for things. You've got to realize that at the other end of that funnel, somebody's looking at your CV and saying it's irrelevant to them because you haven't worked in their industry, which everyone thinks their industry is totally unique, even if it isn't, but they believe it is. You haven't done the job before or something like it. You're not going to score very highly as a potential candidate. So even more so and it's not impossible to make those moves, but you make it through knowing people, them knowing you and trusting you and believing that you can do something that maybe you haven't done before because of some other sort of connection that you have.
So what we're also, I just want to put a little context around it. If you're pivoting, you cannot expect other people to connect the dots for you.
Yes,
if you have a referral that already understands, oh my goodness, this person is literally the analytic queen. They could work across multiple industries here, there, and everywhere. That becomes a much lower factor in preventing you from transitioning from one area to another. So that glue is happening not just from the facts alone. It's coming from the trust and the understanding of your agility as a candidate within that particular scope. So it's really important that, especially if you are augmenting, transitioning, the bigger the gap, the more relationship is required. And I think that that's kind of the key takeaway. I just also want to mention a couple of other things that help to make a referral a preferred method for hiring managers. It costs significantly less, about a quarter of the amount of money to acquire somebody through a referral than it does by posting those opportunities. And it has been proven that the process moves exponentially faster. You don't have to go through layers and layers and layers because, again, you're a proven entity. And then lastly, they stay longer. So the turnover rate for somebody who comes in through a referral is much, much, much lower than somebody who is coming in cold off of a job board. And they're going to want to send a referral bonus to that person in the company so that they can incentivize them to send more, right? So I think that there's really important backup to the reasons on the flip side why that referral is so valuable. And then this is the other question that is coming up from Nashroom. Thank you. Can you address the issue of nepotism and soft skills?
Are they? I don't know if I see them as two issues together. Nepotism is always going to happen. I'm afraid. There's a billion well, not a billion, but there's a million family businesses out there that are run on nepotism. That's always going to happen. It certainly happens at other levels as well. People who've been to the same school or whatever it might be. Again, these are linkages and relevant. They're linkages. They are. It's the ultimate network, isn't it? Totally. Your family. So these things happen. I would prefer they didn't, but they do. Soft skills, I think, are incredibly important. It's actually what getting to an interview, and again, what a referral can help you with. There are lots of people out there with great technical skills, but actually what gets people ahead in businesses and gets you hired at interview are soft skills. I've never been involved in that many super technical interviews. In fact, here's the truth about interviews. This is what people are thinking. It's as basic as this. Do I like this person? Not a lot more to it than that. They believe that based on your CV, you've got there because you've got the, some of the key skills. Yes, they're going to go into detail about things that you've done. But even where you're seen to be lacking, if they like you and believe you can bridge the gap, be through your attitude, as well as your aptitude, and that you bring the right mindset and you display that, then they will take a chance on you over and above somebody who is eminently more qualified, but they don't like.
So when you say like, I just want to qualify that. They don't like you because you're funny or because you're personable. They like you because you're going to help them do what they need you to do.
Absolutely. And you're able to communicate that. So soft skills are about communicating your value, but in fact, empathy is at the core of this. Let's use the word empathy. So people go into an interview situation and they're thinking it's all about me, or it's all about me. It's not about you at all. It's about your interviewer, and you're solving their problem. They've got a problem.
Thank you. So much of what happens in the interview is really being able to assess what is the need that is causing the opening to begin with. What am I trying to solve here? And what experience have I had previously that may be extremely relevant to this? And when you're talking about empathy and communication, we often refer to that as your story, right? What stories are you actually telling in the very, very, very small window that you have? Because it sounds like you have a lot of time. Oh, I have a half an hour at this interview. It's not really a half an hour, because you got to also remove the beginning and the end, which is a rapport and Q&A.
Yeah. So, I talk about career narratives as well. I think, your story, I often start interviews with, the tell me about yourself, which is the ultimate sort of, people think, oh, it's a non-question, but it's basically, I'm giving you as much rope as you want to hang yourself with, or climb up on. And of course, what you need there is something that isn't particularly long, but is compelling, and demonstrates, the journey you've been on and what you've learned. More importantly than that, I would say, in an interview situation, you want your interviewer to talk more than you do. That means you had a good interview, because people like to talk. I'm doing it right now. People enjoy doing it, and they want to talk about what they want to talk about. If you have, and here's the next thing I'd say is, the questions you ask are as important as the answers you give. If you don't have 5, 6, 7, 8 great questions based on that person as well, and that's where LinkedIn will help you. Why wouldn't you ask, why do you work for the company? I noticed, looking at your profile, you've worked in 9 years, you've progressed. How have you managed to do that? What's the secret to your success? What do you think about the culture of the business? You personally, what's your experience? Make it all about them, and they will tell you their stories. And off the back of that, you'll learn so much more than the next guy or girl who doesn't bother to ask. And you'll build rapport, which is what you need in order for them to like you. And you will get to the point where you can then use your closing questions, which you should also have 3 or 4 closers that you can use to find out right there and then whether you're relevant for the job, whether you're going to the second round. And they'll be impressed that you close them as well, because good people close people. They qualify whether they've done well, rather than winging it and coming out and saying, I don't know how I performed.
I think it went all right.
Yeah.
So I want to address in the last few minutes that we have here, something that we talked about prior to going live, but also I think is brewing in the back of the minds of so many of us, because there's word on the street that there's a recession, that there is, imminent issues. And of course, everybody's been talking about inflation, the price of gas and groceries and all of that. Help us to understand how we, as candidates in the market, and also people in the hiring industry, need to be thinking so that we are staying proactive.
Yeah, I've lived through, I think it's 3 or 4 now, recessions, and I've got to be honest, and I've been guilty of telling myself the things that we tell ourselves, which are, oh, it's all it's ruined. Everything's ruined. They won't want to talk to me. And I'm talking about me as a recruiter talking to companies and wanting to do work with them. I won't even bother calling them because they won't be recruiting, or I've even heard they're not recruiting. And I would really, really argue with you to try and abandon those negative thoughts, because there are still opportunities. Problems do create opportunities in most industries, in most companies. Even companies with a recruitment freeze recruit, frankly. They do. That's been my experience over the years. And also, if you're not putting yourself out there, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You will fail because you've told you're not doing anything. So you'll also feel bad about it if you do that. I would be more proactive, particularly, let's say I started to see a reduction in jobs I could apply for. I would use these tactics. I mean, I'd use these tactics anyway, but I'd use these tactics even more. I'd say, I want to work, and here's a very important part as well. So I talk a lot about identifying companies that you want to work for, because a lot of people go into a career move and they say they're open. They think that's a position of strength, and it's not. It's a position of great weakness, because there's no why. Nobody can understand what you want to do. If you can't articulate it yourself, then I don't know how somebody like me is supposed to understand it. What you've got to do is say, I want to do this type of role in this type of industry, and then I've identified these companies, which are the companies I want to work for. Then I want to research them, and I want to attack them, essentially target them, and explain to them why I want to work for them and why I'd be a great hire. Your why is really, really important, and that's what I would suggest that most interviewers are asking during the course of an interview. Why should I hire you? Why are you going to be great for me? If you haven't already understood that and thought about that, then you're at a great loss. The people that do get hired are the ones that have already worked out, I want to work for your business because I understand that you've done this, this, and this. I know you're on a transition path to X. I've had some experience of doing X, Y, and Z. I believe I could help you for this reason, that reason, the other reason. I also just think the values that you have. I've actually spoken to 4 people who work for your business in the past, people that have used to work for you that still think you're a great company, people that are working for you now that tell me that all of the things you say about your business are true. It's that and because I've done all this homework and I've got this inside track, that just makes you a much more compelling candidate, frankly.
Completely. I want to also double click a little bit on this portion of what you shared. The go-to idea for most people is, I got to jump and update my resume. Like the first thing that everyone thinks, oh, you know what? I'm on the market. I should update my resume. And I typically push back and say, before you go ahead and do any of that, you're missing this critical groundwork, which is your why. And it sounds on the surface like that is not going to be valuable. Because why would I go and do this deep dive and try to figure out my why and articulate it? And at the end of the day, your resume is wonderful. And it is a necessary evil. That's how I refer to it. However, nobody's going to hire a piece of paper. They're just not. And they're not going to hire a LinkedIn profile either. They're going to hire the person that is doing this because this is so undeniably, inextricably linked with a personal mission or a way to elevate the company, to grow this revenue, to change and transform this particular area. And doing that footwork isn't necessarily a slam dunk. It can take some time, but there are ways to get at it. So before you rush and do your update, understand why you're doing this in the first place, because otherwise it just doesn't have the same depth and weight.
I would even add to that and just say, look, people don't read CVs.
There you go.
Skim reading at best. So I suggest you lay your CV out in a very logical way. I teach a way of doing it. And yes, your top piece, which some people call profile, I call it your personal value proposition. That's the only bit that people will read. And that is partly about your why. It's why should you hire me? It's why I bring value. So that bit gets read. The rest of it is, who have you worked for? How long were you there? These are things that recruiters do instinctively in their 15 to 30-second scan of your CV. Where did you go to? You know, what's your educational background? The level that you're at. Is, you know, and different CVs speak level in a different way, but nobody's reading it through. So your little iterations, your 100 iterations of your CV are a bit of a waste of time, unless, frankly, you get it in front of the right people that already have a good view of you, but also that you have a good understanding of what value you bring, and you can articulate that in about 4 sentences, because they're the 4 sentences they will read.
4 sentences. Thank you so much, Tony. You have been an amazing leader in this space, and I appreciate you. I appreciate your no-nonsense way of delivering it, and of course, lots of expertise behind it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good luck with the football game tomorrow. I know it's Thursday, and we're always rooting for you. And thank you, LinkedIn, for joining today. Thank you for your great questions. Barbara, John, Wendy, Nashroom, a bunch of other people were here, Joey, and who else? Tegan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.